This is Right On Radio, the voice of the men against time.
Welcome to Right On Radio. My name is Daniel Friberg.
And I'm John Morgan.
And today we also welcome Marcus Follin, also known as the Golden One. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you very much.
So Marcus, he is a video blogger, kind of a self-help guru of some sort. His video blog is focusing on self-improvement, fitness, and recently also politics. Would you mind telling us a little bit about the background, why you decided to start this YouTube channel?
Yeah, absolutely. It actually started as a more of a fitness channel, actually focusing on training, and that whole endeavor started as a little page where I simply answered questions relating to training and nutrition, and then I started including videos on the page actually, and then I took it from there. It was more fun to do videos than to only write, so it was that was the start of it.
Yeah, and then in recent years you also kind of moved more and more towards political subjects, as I think everyone has seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
What prompted that?
I mean, I've been a nationalist and interested in politics and history for much longer than I've been into fitness. So the transition went quite fast, actually. I did only do exclusive fitness for about a year before I transitioned more and more into, first of all, philosophy, because if you are into the gym, strength training, you have often accompanied by a mindset that goes quite well with a lot of true right thoughts, such as accepting personal responsibility, self-determination, and that sort of stuff. So it was a quite natural transition to go from training to philosophy, and then obviously to politics. And the focus over the last perhaps 6 months has been almost exclusively politics, just because of the situation is so severe in Europe. So it is no longer possible to just talk about the proper technique for the bench press when Europe is being invaded. So when I started 2 years ago, the situation was bad, but it was still interesting to talk about other stuff, whereas now the priorities are a bit different.
Yeah, naturally. And also, I mean, as you say, this whole fitness and the concept of self-discipline and improving yourself, it's kind of anti-modernist in nature and ties well together with traditionalist beliefs, as you say. So I understand that you also have a clothing and merchandising brand of some sort. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do indeed. And the motivation for that is simply I want to launch clothes that I want to wear myself, because at the moment there are numerous generic, modernistic, if you will, brands of clothing and fitness clothing. But I want to put out a product there that actually, it's not for everyone. It is for someone who can make a statement that they're not just another someone who doesn't stand for anything really, but it is a statement, more a philosophical statement of the things that are beautiful within training, for example, that self-determination and discipline, will to power, the total rejection of the modern victim culture, distancing yourself from the whole degenerate and decadent lifestyle that many people are entrenched in today. So if you, as I've said in articles and videos, that if you're gonna wear my gear, as it were, it means that you also reject certain things, such as obviously drugs and other degenerate things, and also accept personal responsibility for becoming the best version of yourself as possible, that you're true to your ideals and strive to become a champion of modern Europe.
Sounds excellent. And something I'm sure many of our listeners are very curious about, and actually I am as well, is when your political awakening took place and how you became a nationalist?
It was actually quite early on, I would say. In the gymnasium or high school, I studied international politics, actually. So I was already into, when I was young, you start the gymnasium when you are 16 years of age. So I got into that quite early. First of all, I was, leaning towards the established parties, but I soon found out that those were just, pale reflections of each other that didn't really stand for anything at all. And of course, if you're passionate about something, you can't be a leftist or a conservative. So I began to make some studies of my own, found Flashback, the famous and popular Swedish forum where you can discuss about everything. So I kind of got into the many nationalist thoughts via the internet, actually, and then obviously observations in real life that put me on the path towards nationalism. So yeah, I would say that my engagement began about 10 years ago or something. Then obviously I haven't been active as anything for 10 years, but I've been of these political inclinations for that long at least.
Sounds interesting. And would you mind telling us a little bit about your earliest influences? What kind of websites did you visit? Which books did you read, and so forth, to kind of help you on the path towards a more nationalist position?
Well, to begin from the very beginning, during my upbringing, I always read and surrounded myself with kind of heroic aesthetics. So my father, for example, read the Odyssey about Achilles when I was small. He read that to me and my brother. And then obviously when Lord of the Rings came out, and I played a lot of Age of Empires 2 when I was young as well. So I got that historical, sense of things. So during my upbringing, it wasn't something, political per se, but more the sense of the heroic, the sense of fighting for your nation, fighting for your people, and having those sort of masculine role models. And obviously if you have those sort of masculine role models, it's very hard to try to fit into the more modernist mold for a modern man. So I didn't really find any home in that sort of if you will, spiritual sense. So that basically was my first metapolitical or philosophical inclination. Began quite early, and then later on, it wasn't really any certain thing that pushed me in the direction of nationalism. It just grew on me as I learned more and understood more of the world. It became quite apparent that, especially given the situation in Sweden over the last 10 years, that it's been rapidly deteriorating. It became quite obvious that something needed to be done.
Absolutely, and I find this quite nice to hear, because I can really relate to what you're saying. I had a similar journey. I mean, when I was young, I read a lot of fantasy literature. I mean, everything from Tolkien to Michael Moorcock and pretty much all major fantasy writers, and having that, I mean, that kind of influence from literature, portraying heroic ideals, portraying traditional ideals, kind of lays a pretty good foundation for developing traditionalist views when you get older. I mean, obviously the ideals in all of these books and in some cases video games, as you mentioned, clashes totally with a modern liberal narrative and the cultural Marxist narrative that celebrates weakness and white guilt and so forth. So that was probably one of the most important factors that together, of course, with real life experiences of multiculturalism for me as well. So that's definitely something I can relate to.
Well, I would think maybe one thing that all three of us have in common, in a sense, is that in the modern world, things tend to be kind of compartmentalized. So people think, well, here's your political point of view or your religious point of view, but that's completely separate from your everyday life and from other aspects of your life. Whereas those of us who are more traditionalist, I think that we understand that your spiritual life and your intellectual life and your political life and your physical life all have to be in harmony, as it were, and so that like all aspects of your identity are kind of pointing in one direction. At least that's something I've always tried to cultivate in the things that I do, and I think both of you would probably agree that that's
Yeah, I totally agree on that, and that is probably that we have this kind of integral concept of where we we don't really differentiate between the ideals we have received from the literature we read and so forth, and from various movies and video games, what have you, that promotes traditional ideals. I think there is a huge disconnect in this regard when it comes to cultural Marxists and leftists and liberals, because they have to just kind of, as you say compartmentalize this thing and kind of say, well, okay, I like to watch heroic movies celebrating masculine ideals, but in my everyday life, I celebrate weakness and feminine ideals. If you're a man, and that must
you can have a religion, but as long as it doesn't interfere with your with any other aspect of your life, it's just sort of like a fashion statement that you. You adopt a religion of some sort, if any.
Exactly, that's probably one of many reasons why we have a rampant kind of epidemic of mental illness within the left. Because of this huge disconnect and the amount of doublethink that is required to subscribe to the cultural Marxist worldview, while at the same time reading Tolkien, for example, and watching Lord of the Rings and so forth. It must be very difficult for these people, but not for us, because we are. I mean, we don't need to fool ourselves in that regard. Or what is your take, Marcus, on this?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, if we can take Lord of the Rings as the perfect example of, first of all, the obvious thing, we have these beautiful Western nations being invaded by the hordes from the east, but then we also have the deeper battle between traditionalism. You have the agricultural, picturesque hobbit society, where they have like the organics, beautiful societies based on tradition out in the countryside, versus the factories of Isengard. So we have that kind of battle between traditionalism versus capitalism, and then obviously the battle between different ethnicities, if you will. So you have Gondor and Rohan fighting against the orcs. And I mean, if you view it as a metaphor for current predicament, it's the ultimate motivation, I would say. Just Lord of the Rings, that story. So that's actually one of my favorite films and books.
Yeah, and I mean, it has a deeper message as well. I mean, which is very politically incorrect. I'm 100% sure that Tolkien had this in mind. I mean, that this whole story is actually a metaphor for the defense of European civilization against the Dark Hordes from Mordor, for example. And then Gondor, for example, is one of the border states, like Greece, for example, in the European case, which was invaded by Ottomans and even Spain and Italy invaded by the Moors. So it's in many ways a metaphor for what we have experienced in Europe, and it's kind of a call for defense of European civilization. That's at least how I interpret the whole.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Tolkien actually made statements to that effect during his life. Yeah, that's what he was trying to do.
Yeah, and also we have this famous quote by one of the lead characters, Aragorn. I don't remember the exact quotes, but it's stand, man of the West, and so forth. It's quite inspirational, and it's not very subtle, actually. it's kind of obvious what kind of message that the intention is to send with that famous speech that he gives right before this huge battle.
I'm just curious though, Marcus, do you watch Game of Thrones at all? Because I like it, although I see what a lot of people complain about, the fact that it in many ways it's sort of an anti-traditional depiction of.
I do watch Game of Thrones and I do enjoy it as well. But regarding the criticism, I mean, they're not exactly portraying the anti-traditional forces as utopian, so I wouldn't see it as an argument for quote-unquote progressive values. If we look at Khaleesi, she's the ultimate cultural Marxist in her strive to liberate slaves, but the story portrays it as a very chaotic and very dysfunctional conquest that just turns to chaos. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it makes any statements in favor of anything, but it's just a story based on general chaos and mayhem. That's my analysis of it, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who can contribute with deeper analysis in regard to the series, but I enjoy it actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, me as well, although I totally agree that it doesn't really promote our values that much. It's more or less just simple entertainment in a nice kind of traditional setting, which of course I like quite a lot.
Are you also, it seems like from your broadcast, you're also very interested in history, Marcus, which, of course, I would say the best fantasy literature is always strongly based on either European, actual European history or on European mythological history, or sometimes both. But I know, I like on your broadcast, I always refer to the sons of Rome and so forth. So I guess you also look to history for inspiration.
Yeah, definitely. I am actually in my little library of wisdom as we speak right now, and it's mostly, I would say 80% is historical fiction that I read. So I've always enjoyed reading. I've read books on a continual basis since I was about 14 years of age. So I have a good number of books that I've read. And as I said, it's mostly historical fiction and with some fantasy in there as well. And in regards to the various, Proud Sons of Rome, etc., that's actually from Total War. It's a game that I did some Let's Play videos on, and Proud Sons of Rome is then a metaphor for Europe.
Yes.
So I have this kind of European unity. So that's where that came from. And then also Proud Sons of Macedon being Alexander's great conquest of the East. So you have that fight between the West and the East. Unfortunately now then I don't want to have too harsh stance against Persia because I don't want to contribute to any hostilities against Iran. But back in the day, it's a beautiful story, at least, with Alexander.
Yes, yeah, very much so in the pre-Islamic time. I have to admit I don't play much in terms of video games these days, but that's interesting what you said about those references. I can see how they'd be relevant in cultivating a new respect for heritage and so forth. Like Daniel has shown me some interesting games. I can't remember the one you talked about, Daniel, that's based on Slavic mythology.
It's a Witcher.
Yeah, exactly. Witcher 3.
And that game is one of the best games I've ever played. It's just so full of European tradition and European aesthetics. And also one of the inspirations for my clothing line is actually from The Witcher, or more generally from medieval European heraldry. So just getting to be immersed in that world, totally bereft of political correctness and quote unquote diversity and anything like that. So it was really, really refreshing to just play that game, or play the story, as it were, because you're basically playing an epic story.
Yeah, and that is one of the major strengths of these kinds of games. And of course, due to the technological advancements, these games are becoming more and more kind of movie-like in terms of graphic quality and so forth. And I think that is a very important metapolitical force that many people tend to kind of forget about. I mean, people focus too much on Hollywood and the destructive power of Hollywood movies, but they tend to forget about this huge world of video games, which are, as you say, in terms of Witcher, for example, which is, of course, extremely refreshing, that it's totally bereft of political correctness. It's actually quite politically incorrect in most regards. And it's not at all, it doesn't promote multiculturalism, it doesn't promote HBTQ or stuff like that. And that actually, I mean, Witcher is not, unique in that regard. I mean, most of these kind of fantasy-based games have, until recently at least, I mean, pretty much all of them have been promoting traditional ideals, so they've been quite politically incorrect. They have suffered from a very, very tangible lack of so-called diversity. But and that is what our enemies realized recently, and hence we had this phenomenon Gamergate, where social justice warriors and feminists and so forth started attacking game developers for not having enough gay characters or black characters and so forth. And unfortunately, one of the biggest and unfortunately also one of my favorite developers, BioWare, caved in completely to this, which kind of destroyed their latest games totally, because for example, I mean, all of their earlier games are really awesome and very traditional and very, very, very non-PC. But their latest installment in their Dragon Age series, it's actually kind of a caricature of what you might expect from immense cultural Marxist influence and pressure groups due to this Gamergate thing, where exactly 1/3 of the characters in the game are homosexual and 1/3 are bisexual and 1/3 is heterosexual. So it's like,
okay, I see.
Really made an effort to have it like really fair which is kind of ridiculous, because 99% of all the people who play these games are heterosexual white men, basically, or at least 90%, and so it makes no sense. And also, society as a whole does not consist of 33% homosexuals, 33% bisexuals, and 33% heterosexuals. So it makes no sense whatsoever to make this horrible move that they did, which really actually destroyed, for me at least, what could have been a really awesome game.
All right, yeah. I was thinking about Skyrim as well, on the good side of games. I was really impressed by that, where you have the valiant Nords fighting for their homeland. Also displays traditional virtues of this nice sweet countryside and this heroic struggle against an ancient evil. And then it's also very politically incorrect, because you have the Thalmor, which is a special type of elves who are very powerful, not in terms of sheer numbers, but they have high positions in Skyrim and in the Empire as a whole, and that's obviously can be seen as a metaphor for God's chosen people in our world. Then, so it was quite interesting that they took with the Thalmor in it.
Yeah, I also made the same association as you did when I played Skyrim, and I totally agree with you that is also an example of a really great game, promoting, whether it's intentional or not, it promotes our ideals, and that goes for most of these video games in this genre. And I surely hope that the latest kind of misstep from BioWare is just kind of an anomaly, and it will receive such an amount of negative criticism, so they will kind of back away from that cultural Marxist bullshit that just destroys what could have been really good games.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, after all, they should cater to their audience, which is, as you say, 99% straight white guys who are not particularly interested in playing as a participant in a the gay pride parade. I mean, you want to play these games because you get that, total lack of diversity and, just beautiful traditional aesthetics. There's a great strength of those games. So I mean, their companies, they have to sell their games, and if they're gonna keep doing that, they have to cater to their customers primarily.
Exactly. And I'm sure they will realize this, hopefully as soon as possible. Anyways, we are getting close to the music break, and I know that you, Marcus, have a special wish for what song we should play. Could you please introduce the song and just...
Yeah, absolutely. And this goes quite well into our discussion regarding video games, that music is also a very important thing, a tool or a weapon in the metapolitical battle. That if we, via music, via folk metal, etc., can revitalize that sense of heritage, then there's a great thing, actually. So that's why I chose this, My Ancestors' Blood. The title speaks for itself. It is high testosterone metal, gets you pumped up for the gym. They sing about epic things. So that's also an extremely important component in this great cultural revolution that we're participating in. So yeah, that's basically why I chose that song in particular.
Lactose is currently holding a Kickstarter campaign to fund the translation of 3 of the French New Right author Guillaume Fay's works into English: Archaeofuturism 2.0, Understanding Islam, and Controversy in Society. Please see the program description for a link to details about the campaign and about how you can be among the first to receive the books when they are published.
And there we're back from the break, and with us we have Marcus Follin. Before we move on to some advice about fitness and health, I want to finish the discussion we were starting before the break about metapolitics and the most efficient kind of metapolitics today, and which points are most important to make. And I'm sure you have some good input there, Marcus.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about the Lord of the Rings and the more the culture war, the more spiritual side of things, because we are in a situation where we as Europeans need to know who we are, and what we are not is not just a certain digit IQ numbers. We are not just a bit more law-abiding. No one is going to want to sacrifice maybe his life for that sort of that entry to politics. But if we can revive who we are, the notion of our civilization, something deeper than just statistics, then we are on the right path. And that is why it's so incredibly important to win the culture war. So we win the literature, we win music, we win video games, all those different areas of metapolitics and culture we need to win to revitalize the notion and pride in ourselves, instead of just talking about statistics. Now, statistics is very important as well, but it is not nearly as important as knowing who we are.
Exactly, and that is something that the identitarian movement has understood perfectly. I mean, what we need to do is basically we need to revive the notion of the European identity, about the various national identities that exist in Europe, and make people aware of their own ethnical and cultural identity, because that is what really motivates people, not crime rates, crime statistics, IQ levels. I mean, of course, that might be good as well, but we kind of passed that point where we need to convince people that, well, immigrants commit more crime than indigenous Europeans. I mean, everyone knows this already. And yeah, sure, we have a couple of IQ points. We are a few IQ points above many other peoples of the world, but that is, as you say, that's not something that makes people want to fight and maybe sacrifice their lives. What we need is a strength and identity. And also, I think since we kind of moved beyond the point when we actually need to tell people that, well, immigration is bad because of the crime rate, because of the financial aspects, it costs money, it creates chaos and social instability. We've kind of moved beyond that point because most people realize this. What makes people not act on their convictions is not lack of realization of these important facts. It's rather, for one, lack of identity, and secondly, lack of inspiration and kind of some sort of a demoralized attitude when they don't really see much hope. So our main mission here is to inspire hope in people and make them believe that victory is achievable. And not only
people need a myth to believe in again.
Exactly.
Exactly. And
not only achievable, it's our victory is inevitable. That's a message we really need to hammer into people's minds.
And I would also state that materialism is a great enemy, because as long as we have this sort of obsession with materialism and the extreme luxury we do still have in the West, if that is the primary goal of each individual, then there is not much that, they don't want to risk their perhaps career or their social network or what have you to fight for something higher. But if we can renounce materialism and place something more spiritual, something higher, the strive for something higher above materialism, and the more people actually who does that, then we are in a much better situation, because as it is right now, I would say many people are blinded by this wild consumerism that traps them in I don't want to say slavery, but almost sort of that's the highest thing in life. If the highest thing in life is to be able to participate and buy stuff, I mean, that's not really it's not really a happy existence for people. And I think that's also why we see many depressed people, many young people committing suicide, both men and women, because they don't have anything higher. They don't have any higher sense of happiness than the next instant gratification, the next kick they get out of buying a new set of shoes or what have you.
Exactly. And they also, I mean, this materialistic worldview that we're living in, I mean, this liberal society, consumerist society, it deprives people of a deeper meaning with their lives, and they feel a lack of connection to society and a lack of purpose, basically, because consumerism, I mean, saving up money, or even worse, taking loans to buy the latest MacBook or iPhone, it doesn't really provide a good substitute for our earlier, more traditional ways of finding meaning in our lives and finding a role and position in the society, and that is also why we need hierarchy, so everyone knows their place, and that is a perfect recipe for creating a happier people, rather than this consumerist culture that we're living in right now.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that women are probably the primary targets of this. I can just get this image of a 35-year-old woman who has spent all of her energy on getting a career so she can sit in a cube office somewhere, getting a good salary so that she can buy the next new Gucci bag, and that's the source of her happiness, without any children that can give her any long-term satisfaction. So I see, I can understand really why many women are so depressed as they are today, Western women, because they don't have that was natural to them 100 years ago, that you have a family, that you find joy in children instead of some, as you write in your book, Daniel, a multinational company that doesn't give a damn about you.
Exactly, and not only the family itself, but also the extended family. I mean, when in the older traditional European societies, people tended to have children at the age of maybe 20, 22, or even earlier, and which of course meant that they would have grandchildren when they were in their 40s, and even when they reached the age of 60, in the cases where they did that, they would have grandchildren and so forth, and that created like a really large extended family where you had a very clearly defined role and purpose with your life, and that is something that is far more rewarding and provides much more satisfaction than the kind of single lifestyle, single consumerist lifestyle of liberal modernity.
That's why
definitely, and that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Marcus.
I was just going to say that the extreme loneliness that a lot of people, I mean, it's so understandable that people yearn for a sense of belonging when they get out, they move out from their parents, move to a little flat and spend a lot of time alone without really having any deeper connection with anyone. And perhaps the friends they have, the social cohesion consists of going out drinking alcohol 2 times a week, and that's about it. They don't have anything deeper, and this should be a strength of attraction for a more traditional view of life. And I think most people, when they wake up to this, that they can see an alternative to this extremely depressing and lonely, unsatisfying consumerist life, then I think we will see more people, going to traditionalist kind of views, and also perhaps if there comes more spiritual endeavors. In Sweden, for example, we have the Asatroförbundet, like the organization for Asatro. Perhaps more people can seek companionship there, because we don't even have any church anymore in Sweden, for example, and indeed in most of the West. So there's a lot of components that are missing in the modern world, and if we can present those in attractive way. We have gained a lot of new true friends in our quest for Modern Europe, I'd say.
I totally agree on that. John, did you have anything to add to this discussion before we move on to...
Earlier, the point I was going to make was that it's the things that both of you were describing is why I don't describe myself as a conservative, because I don't want to conserve Europe or America the way they are now. I really think, to be of the real right, you have to, actually be a revolutionary. And I don't mean that in the leftist sense of, that you want to, overthrow everything that's been established before you out of, some kind of immature sense of, entitlement or superiority, but more in the original sense of the word revolution, which meant, coming back to your origins, that, we have to bring the West back to the sense that drove the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans and the Vikings. Not that we can I'm not saying we should try to recreate that exactly, because that's impossible, but we need to bring that spirit back to the West, and we can't do that just by conserving things as they are, because it might not be possible in a Europe or in America governed by real right principles to have this kind of shopping mall culture, plastic culture, where everyone has this extreme luxury. We might have to make some sacrifices, but if we have the right perspective, we'll understand that will make us stronger as a people.
Absolutely. And also, just to add to the discussion regarding the concept of conservatism, I don't think any conservative really wants to just preserve society as it is today, because I think most of them agree that it's horrible. But their primary weakness is that they are kind of envisioning a return to society as it was in the 50s or something. And
yeah, that's true.
And then obviously that is not enough. That's just delaying our civilization's degeneration into forms much like the way they are today. So that is why I always stress the fact that I'm a traditionalist rather than conservative, because I believe in eternal values. I believe in a return to the old traditional Europe. The Europe we had before the French Revolution, basically, that is something to strive for, even if it might not be good enough, but it's at least a worthy goal to strive for on the way to creating the perfect traditionalist European society, I guess. Marcus, since much of your video blogs is kind of centered around fitness and so forth, what would be your best advice to young European men, as well as women, of course, but primarily men, since they are kind of the defenders of our civilization when it comes to fitness?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I would say is that you can view strength training or bodybuilding as confidence building, because it's not so much about, having a biceps that is 45 centimeters circumference, but it's about achieving something. It's about progressing. It's about going forward. It's about acquiring confidence. So it's more about building discipline and building mental qualities than actually, building a physique that looks in a certain way. That's obviously a great benefit of it as well as being, strong and capable of defending yourself and your family. So you have all these sort of different aspects that are really, really good to have. But we can elaborate a bit on the confidence part, because what I sense in today, a lot of younger guys, they are not very confident. And of course, confidence is a key component if you're gonna attract females. And if our young guys can't attract females, then that's a blow against the family. And if we don't have any families, we don't have any Western civilization at all. So a large component of promoting fitness culture or a gym culture or a training culture is also, in fact, a step in the direction of traditional masculine values that can attract women and, go in that direction. But speaking of fitness in the fitness sense, there are obviously a lot to think about maybe when you begin, but some key concepts is to maybe train 4 times a week, something like that. Focus on the heavy compound movements, and what I mean with that is deadlifts, squats, bench press, military press, and rows. And if you center your training around those and just continuously try to get stronger, and that should be your key concept throughout your training. So you have these long-term goals and you have daily goals as well. So just try to take small steps forward, so you continuously progress all the time. That's the best single advice I can give. So you will get stronger all the time.
Sounds like excellent advice. And also another aspect another positive aspect of this gym culture and making sure to work out properly and following a program along the lines of the one you suggested, of course, is the benefit of raising your own testosterone level. I mean, the contemporary society has a huge problem when it comes to male testosterone levels. I mean, it's scientifically proven that men today in the modern Western world have testosterone levels that are way below the testosterone levels of our ancestors. Even if you go back just 50 years, they are far lower today. And I'm sure a lot of factors are the cause of this. Of course, we have an abundance of usage of the West's so-called death pill. I mean, more women than ever are today using contraceptives in the medical form, which affects the drinking water, it affects fish and sea life in general, and creates an abundance of estrogen in the drinking water and in fish and so forth. And that could be one of the explanations. But I also believe that one of the main factors for the low testosterone levels in modern man is this kind of lazy attitude where self-gratification, instant gratification is celebrated as something good, something to strive for, which makes people, especially men in this regard, kind of just sit at home and don't do any physical activities really, which of course will lead to a lower testosterone level. So yeah, if for no other reasons, I mean, the confidence building part is of course extremely important as well, but I think it all ties together. I mean, if you manage to raise your testosterone level, which you will if you work out hard and do some proper exercises, for example deadlift, squats, so forth, it's proven that your testosterone level will be kind of boosted by this. But what's your take on that, Marcus?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And as you say, it is scientifically proven that the testosterone has, in all actuality, dropped significantly over the last few decades. And that is interesting. And that's something we need to take into consideration. So it's not only the cultural factors like the feminized society, but it's also a biological reality, which we, in the long term, obviously need to put an end to. And especially when it even affects the ecological system, when the hormones of a fish out in the wildlife are getting affected by the death pill. I mean, that's not a sustainable way to have like a majority of the females in a population on the death pill. But yeah, in regards to training and increasing the testosterone that way, as you say, we have this kind of culture of instant gratification, and 2 things come to mind right there that is kind of related to training. First of all, we have perhaps more common in America than in Europe, but the obese epidemic, that people get fat, and that's obviously because you get instant gratification by eating unhealthy food. Unhealthy food is then with high fat and high sugar content, so you get that aspect. And if you become obese, you will also harm your natural hormonal levels. So that's one part. Another part is the degenerate alcohol and drug culture. And if you become serious with going to the gym, you will probably stop going out drinking alcohol so much, because as soon as you notice your gains, as it were, your muscle gains, and you go forward, that satisfaction becomes larger than satisfaction of getting drunk on weekends. So that will actually be a step away from the degenerate nightlife kind of culture. And then the third part is a huge problem in young Western men, and that's obviously the problem of porn. So you can get your instant sexual gratification 10 minutes in front of the computer without actually doing any type of initiative to actually do it in real life, as it were. And that also drains the masculine energy that could be used for other more productive endeavors, such as going to the gym. So that's also a message I'm trying to get out there, to stop watching porn for young Western men, because it's a weapon targeted against them to take away their masculine energy.
Yeah, and of course I totally agree, and especially in these dire times, I mean, we are kind of watching or living in the midst of the biggest crisis in European history ever, and it's I mean, with that taken into consideration, it's of course a very bad thing with the low testosterone levels in modern European men, because what we need now are soldiers willing to fight and die for the preservation of and the salvation of European civilization.
Also willing to go out and meet actual women and have children with them, which also requires testosterone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if a guy has low testosterone, his ability to take risks, such as, taking the risk of talking to a girl, I don't know how that's a risk, but a lot of guys perceive it that way. And I mean, if you have really low testosterone, that can also be linked to low confidence and a low drive to actually meet women. So we have the family problem also in regards to testosterone. And as you say, Daniel, in addition to, we need men to stand up and speak up. I can't really understand all of these guys who are afraid to lose a friend at their university because they speak up. I mean, a real man wouldn't really care about what some feminized beta at his university thinks. I mean, should do the right thing that is right, instead of listen to this.
Exactly, and I'm 100% sure that if we had the same testosterone levels in European men today as we had like 50 years ago, the whole multicultural project would never be possible, because so many men would protest and speak out instead of cowering behind their computer screens, writing anonymous comments at best, if they even dare to do that. Most people are just keeping silent about their political beliefs, even though they understand that, well, multiculturalism is not such a good thing. Our country is being invaded, and, well, that might not be such a good thing either. But I choose to remain silent, because otherwise I could lose some friends. My girlfriend might break up with me. That is ultimate proof that someone is a beta, to not even have control of his own girlfriend and being afraid to tell her what he believes about the current immigration policies, because he is afraid she will break up. That's totally disgusting whenever I see this phenomenon.
I agree, that's totally unworthy of a man, and I suppose that's also a huge problem when it comes to the instability of families in the West, that men are not really capable of satisfying their women, because they're taught and brainwashed and accept the notion that women like some sort of feminine type of warm, caring man, whereas in reality a woman is, unless she's a lesbian, she will be attracted to a man. And if men don't behave like men, then it's not a surprise that we have so many divorces and etc. and instability in the families, when there is a malfunctioning hierarchy, a malfunctioning attraction between the two sexes. So I'd say that it's a huge problem in every single aspect, that men have become so feminized to the point that they actually even harbor this sort of warm, embracing feminine qualities when it comes to refugees. So instead of saying like, oh, is this really secure and safe for my people, they say, oh, we need to take care of them. So I find that also very unworthy.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. And to kind of sum that up, the situation we're currently experiencing in the Western world, especially Western Europe, Scandinavia in particular. I mean, Sweden is always kind of the worst example, unfortunately, but at least it might serve as a warning to other European countries, I hope, is the total, I mean, the modern society based on cultural Marxist principles and feminism, none the least, is causing basically men and women, it causes total gender confusion, and it makes men and women totally incompatible with each other, and that is the biggest explanatory factor to why there are so few happy families and happy relationships, and people are kind of living some sort of eternal teenage lifestyle with this, with a lifestyle that is usually termed serial monogamy. They have like a relationship after relationship that lasts for maybe 1 or 2 years at most, and produces new children whatsoever, and then they move on to the next one and so forth. And I think the main explanatory factor to this is men behaving less like men and women behaving less like women. Women are becoming more masculine and men are becoming more feminine, and that is a problem that needs to be addressed for us to recreate a functioning society in our countries.
Although I will say that there's a tendency among some people on the right to blame Western women a lot, and there might be some basis for that, but at the same time, when you look at the condition of the average man in North America or Western Europe, you can't really blame a woman for. I mean, she might not even be aware of the actual reasons why she's not attracted to her boyfriend anymore or whatever, but it's actually because of this lack of willingness to embrace masculine qualities, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree there, and I'd be the first to actually blame or like take responsibility for ourselves. So I blame white men in the first place, because ultimately we can tell men to man up, but we can't tell women to find a feminized man attractive. So the women, yeah, they might act up and be quite horrible in a lot of ways, but they are that way because Western men have lost their way, basically. So I understand that women are unhappy with their boyfriend and that they start treating their boyfriend bad because the boyfriend isn't putting his foot down once in a while and acting as the leader of the family. Because I mean, let's face it, no woman is gonna be happy with living with a servant as her husband. Like she needs a leader of the household, someone that can take care of her, protect her, and decide once in a while, be a man.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also, I mean, of course, it's very popular these days to always blame the white man, but for everything. I mean, every historical injustice is the white man's fault and so forth. But in this case, I actually believe it's true. I mean, we should accept responsibility, and we should realize that the problem is with white men, white European men, and their behavior, and we shouldn't take the easy path and blame external factors and other competing people, because they are just following their own interests. I mean, the problems we are facing in Europe today is a direct result of white European men not taking care of their own interests and not behaving like men should behave.
Yeah, definitely. And then also both my audience and I suppose the majority of Right On's audience is white men. So it kind of makes sense to speak directly to white men. And if we want to change, I mean, the change begin within ourselves. So we don't have the same outreach to tell all like Muslim migrants to stop coming here, but we can tell our white brothers to do certain things. And if we can change that way, I think we can save Western civilization itself.
Absolutely. And on that topic, what would be your advice to European men and women of today? What should they do? I mean, what should they prioritize, and how can they become a positive force in today's struggle?
First of all, a return to virtue, a return to a bit more heroic sense of essence, and then some practical tips. train hard, train something perhaps violent. I mean MMA or something, because that also is an integral part of being a man, I suppose, having that a bit of combat in your life, and then also obviously lift weights. That has tremendous health benefits, and also, as you mentioned, is good for your hormonal levels. And then read every day before you go to bed. It can be an article, it can be a book, but just keep reading, because you will gain a deeper understanding. And I've found that the more I delve into intellectual endeavors, the happier I get, in a sense, because it is quite easy that you become a bit depressed when all you see is doom and gloom. But if you can connect the dots a bit, I think you will become more confident in your position, and that will also bring joy to you. And then also, lastly, I would encourage people to start drawing some more strength from our traditions and aesthetics. So, I don't know, go and look at a church, go and look at a museum, whatever. Like, we have so many cool things in European history that we can find strength in. Not all peoples have that, but we actually do. So we can, draw inspiration from so many stories, so many epic deeds in history. So the main point here is, become a bit more aware of European history and participate in the great reconquest of the West.
And with those words of wisdom from our true friend Marcus Follin, we want to thank you all for listening to this episode of Right On Radio, and tune in again in a few days. Take care. Bye.